I inherited a stranger's estate and found a room that shouldn't exist. I never met my Aunt Patricia. She was my mother's older sister, and they had a falling out before I was born. My mother refused to talk about her. All I knew was that she lived alone in a massive old house in Vermont, never married, never had children, and never reached out to us. So when a lawyer called me 3 months ago to say Patricia had died and left me everything, I thought it was a scam. It wasn't. The will was clear. Every piece of her estate, the house, the land, the accounts, everything, belonged to me. I was 28 years old, drowning in student debt, living in a studio apartment the size of a closet. This inheritance was supposed to be my miracle. I drove to Vermont the next weekend. The house was a 3-story Victorian with a wraparound porch, the turret, and a stained glass window that caught the afternoon light like a cathedral. Inside, the furniture was draped in white sheets. The air smelled of lavender and old paper. Everything was frozen in time, as if Patricia had simply stepped out for groceries and never returned. The lawyer handed me the keys and a sealed envelope with my name on it. Inside was a letter from Patricia, written in a shaky but elegant hand. It said, "Dear niece, I'm sorry we never met. I hope this house brings you peace. Explore every corner, but do not open the door at the end of the hallway on the 2nd floor. The one painted black. There is nothing behind it. Trust me. With love, your Aunt Patricia." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it, put it in my pocket, and immediately went looking for the black door. I found it at the end of the 2nd floor hallway, just as Patricia described. It was painted matte black from top to bottom, including the hinges and the doorknob. It looked like a void cut into the wall. I pressed my ear against it and heard nothing. No wind, no creaking, no signs of a room behind it. Just absolute silence. I tried the knob. Locked. I searched the house for a key, but found nothing. That night, I slept in Patricia's bedroom, a grand room with a 4-poster bed and lace curtains. At exactly 3:33 a.m., I woke up to a sound. A scratching noise, faint but persistent, coming from the hallway. I followed it to the black door. The scratching was coming from the other side. Something was clawing at the wood, trying to get out. I stood there for what felt like an hour, paralyzed, listening to the rhythmic scrape of nails against the door. Then it stopped. A voice spoke from the other side. It was my mother's voice. "Sweetheart, let me out. It's so dark in here. Please. I've been here for so long. My mother has been dead for 6 years." I ran back to the bedroom, locked the door, and did not sleep. In the morning, I called the lawyer and demanded to know what was behind the black door. He hesitated, then said Patricia had never mentioned it to him. But he did offer a piece of information that made my stomach drop. Patricia had not lived alone. She had a sister who lived with her. Not my mother. Another sister. One I had never heard of. Her name was Eleanor. She had been born with a rare condition that made her allergic to sunlight. She lived entirely indoors, mostly at night. She disappeared 40 years ago. No body was ever found. I researched everything I could about Eleanor. There was almost nothing. A birth certificate. A single photograph, grainy and faded, of a pale girl with enormous dark eyes standing in the shadow of a doorway. And a police report filed by Patricia herself, stating that Eleanor had wandered off one night and never returned. But the report was strange. Patricia claimed Eleanor left through the back door, but there were no footprints in the snow. No signs of forced entry. No witnesses. The investigation was closed after 2 weeks. I went back to the black door. This time, I brought a crowbar. I told myself I was crazy. I told myself the voice was a dream, the scratching was probably mice, the letter was the eccentricity of a lonely old woman. But I had to know. The lock was old and gave way after a few hard strikes. The door swung open, and cold air rushed out, colder than anywhere else in the house. Beyond the door was a staircase. Stone steps, narrow and steep, descending into absolute darkness. I grabbed a flashlight and went down. The stairs went deeper than the house's foundation should have allowed. The walls changed from wood to stone to packed earth. The air grew damp and heavy. At the bottom, I found a room. It was circular, with walls made of rough stone and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the center of the room was a bed. On the bed was a woman. She was impossibly thin, her skin translucent, her hair white and wispy. But she was alive. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Her eyes were open, huge and dark, just like the photograph. She looked at me and smiled. "You came," she whispered. "Patricia said someone would come. Eventually." Her name was Eleanor. She had been in that room for 40 years. She told me everything in a voice that was barely audible, a voice that had not been used in decades. Patricia had not been protecting her. Patricia had been keeping her. Eleanor's condition was real, she was allergic to sunlight, but it was manageable. She could have lived a normal life indoors, with proper care. Instead, Patricia convinced her she was a danger to herself and others. She told Eleanor that the world above was dangerous, that she was safer underground. She brought her food, water, books, and candles. Once a week, she would visit and talk to her. But those visits became less frequent over the years. Eventually, they stopped altogether. Eleanor had been alone for the last 8 years, surviving on canned goods and water from a pipe in the wall. She did not know Patricia was dead. She did not know the house had been given to me. She only knew that one day the food stopped coming, and no one answered when she screamed. I asked her about the scratching, the voice, the words in my mother's voice. She looked at me with those enormous eyes and said, "That wasn't me. I don't scratch. I don't speak. I wait." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. Something else was in the house. Something that knew my mother's voice. Something that had been trying to get me to open the door. I helped Eleanor up the stairs. It took almost an hour because her legs had atrophied. When we finally reached the hallway, she flinched at the sunlight filtering through the curtains and began to weep. She had not seen natural light in 4 decades. I wrapped her in a blanket and called an ambulance. The doctors said she would recover physically, but the psychological damage was immeasurable. I visited her every day in the hospital. She told me more about Patricia, about the years of manipulation, about the slow descent into captivity. Patricia had not been a recluse. She had been a jailer. And the black door was not meant to keep people out. It was meant to keep Eleanor in. But the question of the scratching and the voice remains unanswered. Eleanor swears she never made those sounds. And I believe her. Because a week after I moved into the house, I woke up at 3:33 a.m. to the scratching again. It was coming from the black door. The door I had left open. I walked to the hallway and the scratching stopped. Then a voice spoke. It was Patricia's voice this time. "Thank you for letting her out. Now it's my turn." I turned on the hallway light. There was nothing there. Just the open door, the dark staircase, and silence. I closed the door. I locked it. I pushed a heavy dresser in front of it. Then I moved out of the house the next day. I sold it for far less than it was worth to a developer who plans to tear it down. I told them nothing about what's underneath. Let them find out on their own. Eleanor lives with me now, in a small apartment with blackout curtains and warm lamps. She's learning to trust the world again. We talk about Patricia sometimes, about the years of isolation, about the voice that still haunts me. Eleanor says Patricia was always a woman who got what she wanted. If she wanted to be let out of something, she would find a way. I don't know what happens to the house now. I don't know what the developer will find when they demolish it. But sometimes, late at night, my phone rings from a blocked number. I answer, and there's nothing but scratching on the other end. Distant. Persistent. And I wonder if Patricia is still waiting. Waiting for someone to open a door that no longer exists. Waiting for a room that has already been emptied. Some prisons don't need walls. Some prisoners don't need bodies. And some inheritances are not gifts. They are traps.